Hey guys, welcome to my One Piece discussion on chapter 983, entitled Thunder. I'll be doing this discussion from the fan translation, but over here, in this sexy little box, what you'll get is the official, as they released later today. Starting from the top, we have good old Pound. Pound has found his way to his daughter, and I think what's still up in the air for us is how he survived all this. I'm not seeing any scars on his neck, so I'm maybe wondering if when Ivan slashed him, he slashed him in the back instead of the neck, and that's how he survived. It's quite an interesting story, but it does leave a little loopholes for me. For instance, I'm wondering how it is that Big Mom and her pirates knew that Luffy was in Wano, but have no idea of the location of Bage and his crew. I think ultimately this is going to be a happy ending for Lola, as I guess she's going to marry Gotti. There's not much more I can say about that. Moving on, we find ourselves at the top of the waterfall, and Perospero has made his way to the top. It's a little strange for me that he hasn't brought his sister Smoothie, because from what he says, King Straw Hat Marco, I hope you're ready, Perrin. And he doesn't agree with the alliance between Big Mom and Kaido either. So I'm not quite sure what he's planning to do on his own. And yeah, that's a little bit strange. I think this is the only thing I didn't really like about this chapter, is the whole Perospero going on his own. I think the Big Mom pirates are taking this a little too casually, and we see that a little later with Big Mom herself. While inside Onigashima itself, we see that she has managed to get to Usopp and Chopper. She's hit the Brachio tank and it's transformed somehow. I think this is Oda showing us that Big Mom is not as much of a meme as we think, but she has been distracted and she wants to go back and get Zeus, which I think it's fair, that her priority is Zeus more than destroying what she would consider Straw Hat fodder. She's really after the head of Luffy, not the rest of his crew. So what we see next is Nami, Chopper, and what's her name? Shinobu. But we see the three of them running away from Big Mom, and we have Prometheus, who seems like he's playing a game of hide and seek, telling Mama where the Straw Hats are, and obviously Carrot's not too happy with this. I think this is quite an interesting little bit of a scene, because right after this is when we see that Momo has been put on the crucifix, and we know that Nami's goal is to get to Momo. So it's interesting for me how it'll play out. This is another scene where I feel like the Big Mom pirates are taking it a bit too casually. The Straw Hat pirates have just left Whole Cake Island, and they seemed like they were caught at Whole Cake Island, and they still managed to get away. So for her to be walking like casually towards them and saying, well, they're walking to the performance floor, there's no way out, I think it's a little too casual. She doesn't understand yet just how potent the Straw Hat pirates can be. Interestingly enough, she's turned some sandals, an umbrella, looks like a mop or a broom, into some homies. So that should be interesting. And as an aside, before I forget, Sanji has gone off. He says he's gone off because he doesn't want to abandon the prostitutes. But I think the way that Oda has paneled it reminds me of his times as Mr. Prince. And we know at Little Garden and at Enies Lobby, when Sanji went off on his own mission, he came back and saved the whole crew. So I do think that there's something that Oda is working with here that's going to be interesting. I don't think he's just trolling Sanji once again. I think he's doing something really cool with it. The next thing is we see the panel of Momo on the crucifix, and Queen says, "Are you sons of bitches ready?" Which I really love, because I think that's such a funky thing that Queen loves, the way he talks, and he's dancing. He's a real entertainer, and he's one of my favorite characters out of this entire Wano arc. Orochi comes up and announces that this is the son of Odin, and we see that there's surprise from from the masses. And I think part of this is because they were expecting the son of Odin to be 28 years old at this point, not to be a child. And also an execution during a celebration is a bit, it's a bit weird. But this is interesting. Some of the fan base have speculated that this is maybe where Momo will release his Conqueror's Haki. I'm not so sure, just because I think there's certain circumstances that surround characters that have unleashed their conquerors for the first time, and I'm actually going to get into that just now with when I discuss Zoro, because that comes up next. So what we see is that Zoro, Kid, and Killer are busy with gifters, and one of the gifters tells Zoro that there's 500 of them, and he should give up because they also wanted to be Pirate King once upon a time. Now we know Zoro is not going to give up, but what's really interesting about this is it's obviously a callback to that Whiskey Peak period where Zoro took out 100 members of Baroque Works on his own. And I think what's really interesting for me is I'm caught in two minds about what could happen here. Number one, Zoro could take out the 500 gifters, and that's just with Whiskey Peak all over again, and it's hype, etc., etc. But the other thing is, it reminds me of the situations upon which Conqueror's Haki has actually been expressed for the first time by a character. You guys will remember that when Luffy was fighting the Gorgon sisters and Sandersonia was about to crush Marguerite, that's when his Haki was unleashed. I don't think it was the first time. I think it happened against an animal the first time. And then again, his Conquerors was unleashed when he couldn't get to Ace, and Ace was about to be executed. Ace himself unleashed Conqueror's Haki for the first time when he couldn't save Luffy from Pochemi, and Don Quixote do Flamingo, the first time he unleashed his Conqueror's Haki, he and his family was about to be executed. So from these instances, one thing that I start to see as a pattern is the fact that when a character is feeling helpless and enraged, that's generally the first time their Conqueror's Haki manifests. Now, when I look at the history of Zoro, unlike Luffy, Zoro is almost always in a situation where he can control, or he's always calm. I think of in Little Garden when he, Nami, and Vivi were almost killed, Zoro wanted to strike a cool pose. When Kuma came to kill Luffy at Thriller Bark, Zoro was able to negotiate with Kuma, and as such his rage was contained. I just wonder, because I think a lot of the community have been wondering when Zoro is actually going to use Conqueror's Haki, and I just wonder if, because of the way he trained, he's never been and because of the fact that in the series he's never been in a position of helplessness, if this isn't it. See, because for I think the first time, Zoro's been portrayed as having a love interest. Well, that's definitely for the first time. He's having a love interest in the story. And that love interest, Hiyori, is the sister of Momo. Momo is also sort of a mentee of Zoro. So I wonder if, while he's busy fighting these 500 gifters, if he sees that Momo is about to be executed and can't get there, would that cause enough rage inside of him that he unleashes his conquerors for the first time? I think it's nicely set up for that. I think it's important to point out that Yasui's death was very similar to how Momo was about to be executed, and I think that's going to add a lot of fuel to Zoro's flame, so that really could stir up the conquerors inside of him. As far as Kid and Killer go, some of the community have been speculating that maybe they're around the level of Zoro because they're fighting the same gifters. I don't think so. I think what happens next with Luffy is just Luffy being taken to the side as Oda always does. He doesn't want Luffy to get to Kaido too quickly, so that there are other matchups that can happen, and Luffy will come back much later. Moving on to Luffy's scenario. So we see now the play out of that meeting between Ulti and Luffy from last week. Now I had predicted that Oda wasn't going to cause much of a fight here. I had my reasons, and well, I was wrong, and that's how it goes with One Piece. If you speculate on something, Oda's gonna go in a completely different direction, which is cool and which is why we love it. But first we see we see how much of a caring sister that Ulti is. She's constantly concerned about Pei, as she calls him. And it's kind of funny because Luffy knows that she's the one who rode him like a sled down the stairs. So why is she asking Luffy what he did to Pei? And what I love, of course, on this scene is that Luffy announces himself, "I am Luffy, the man who will become king of the pirates." That's always hype. And of course, what follows is a brief confrontation between Luffy and two of the Tobiropo. Now this is a really hype thing. I've seen in the community that people have been questioning whether you can scale it or not, and I think to an extent you can. I don't think it's major scaling, but there are certain things that we learn out of this that we can use to scale. For instance, Page One and Ulti can use observation haki, and I like how they use their observation haki, because when Ulti headbutts Luffy and knocks him to the ground, she immediately transforms, and so does Page One. And the fodder around them ask why are they transforming, because this guy's definitely dead. And Ulti responds, "Then what's this haki I'm sensing?" This is a great little moment for me, because it reminds me of the time when Silver's Rayleigh was training Luffy, and he went on to that island next to Amazon Lily. It was called Rusukaina. He went onto that island and he noted that there are 500 creatures that are stronger than Luffy here. And I think it's really interesting that this is how Ulti basically uses her observation haki. She notices how strong Luffy is, and she immediately transforms when she recognizes that she can't take him out in base. Luffy, of course, does not transform. He never does, by the way. So I don't think it's a big deal. He fought Kaido in base before he turned into Gear 4, hit him with the Gear 3rd. So I don't think this is a scaling of like, well, Luffy is so much more powerful than these guys that he fights them in base. More than, this is just what Luffy does at the beginning of any fight. But he is able to speed blitz him and put Ulti on the floor, ducks under an attack from Page One, and hits him with a Gear 3rd uppercut, which looks really hype. I love those panels. Then Ulti gets up immediately and grabs him, and she's about to hit him with an Ulti Meteor, which another thing we see in this fight is that Luffy's using now Future Sight. He calls her headbutt earlier on, and even here he says not gonna happen, and decides to transform into Gear 4. But before he can do that, we get the most hype moment of this chapter, and that is the Thunder Bagua coming from Yamato. There's been a lot of speculation about who Yamato is. Is he strong? Is he a scrub? And I think it's clear to see that Yamato is pretty strong. He's able to take out Ulti with a single hit. I mean, that is the Thunder Bagua, which he learned from his father. But still, it's a pretty dope scenario. And I do like how Yamato is drawn. He's got that Odin bow on his back. I don't know what that's called in Japanese. He's got the shackles, which remind me of when Odin was being boiled. And that's very interesting. That could be just because he was captured earlier and he escaped. It could be that his history has something to do with him being a fanboy of Odin. But it's interesting because after this he says, he introduces himself and he says, "You're Straw Hat Luffy. I've been waiting for you this entire time." And that's interesting because you ask the question, how does he even know about Luffy? We know that Wano is a closed-off nation, so he wouldn't have read the papers, he wouldn't have known about Marineford, unless his father gave him access to that information, because Kaido knows what's happening outside. But it's very interesting, people are speculating that it's Ace. That's the relationship between Yamato and him knowing Luffy, which I think is legit. I think that's most likely what it is. When Ace was there, he told him about his little brother. But yeah, it's just speculation at this point. Some people have speculated that he's Odin, which no, and some even said Momo. It's not Momo, but it is really interesting, and I look forward to seeing how Oda plays this out. Of course, now we know that we're gonna get a flashback, 10, 15 pages of the history of Yamato and Ace, probably a little bit about Yamato and Kaido, and some tragic event which is causing Yamato to turn on his father. That's going to be interesting. Lastly, and I forgot to mention this, we learn in this chapter that that Ulti is her zone is a Pachycephalosaurus, which is up here, and I think we're reminded that page 1 is a Spinosaurus, which is over here. So yeah, it was a great chapter for me. 9 out of 10. The reason I'm giving it 9 out of 10 is because I didn't like that first group of panels. It's not that I didn't like it. It's just weird for me that Smoothie wasn't brought along with her brother Perospero. It just seems a bit plot holy. I mean, why didn't that happen earlier as well? They've been out on the sea for a week. At some point they learned about the alliance and they didn't try and go up. And when they did, he just left. There's a lot there that I've got questions about. But otherwise, the rest of the chapter I absolutely love. But yeah, guys, tell me what you guys think. Did you like the chapter? What do you think is going to happen with Zoro and Nami and Sanji and all those situations? What do you think Oda is setting up? I mean, I do realize that Oda's pretty much put a wrench in the works, and none of us and all our theories are kind of going out the window right now. But it'd be interesting. And Yamato and Luffy, that's a really interesting vibe. It does give me the vibes of Thriller Bark. You remember in Thriller Bark when Luffy chased down the shadow of Gecko Mariah, and he went and met Lola and her crew, and he got the power up of shadows. People have speculated that that's what might happen. I don't think it's a Gecko Mariah thing that's going to happen, but it does give me those vibes because Luffy's been taken away. He's been taken away from the Momo situation, from the Nami situation, all these things. So he's going to be away for a lot of very big things happening. But I wonder what it is that Oda's setting up there. Is it a power up for Luffy? Is it just a plan? I think we all agree that Luffy needs to be powered up a bit more before he can beat Kaido, even if that is in a group. So that's really interesting. Yeah, that's it for me, guys. If you like the video, click like. If you want to follow me for more content, as I will be posting more often after this, then hit the subscribe button. Anyway, guys, keep safe, keep loved, and keep alive. See you next time. Cheers.